Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. I also want to invite you this Thursday, October 22nd, to join me for a webinar where we discuss the long-range forecast for the remainder of fall and also winter. We're certainly going to be talking about La Nina. We'll also give a quick recap of the 2020 growing season, lessons learned, and we'll talk about this hurricane season we've been enduring. But one of the main features I will be discussing will be the influence of this La Nina, which you've seen here, these cooler colors representing cold ocean temperatures, which are now down to almost 1.5 degrees Celsius below normal, which would make this a moderate strength La Nina. We'll discuss what this means for North America and also for South America and their upcoming growing season. But first, one of the things we will be really digging into is this winter forecast released by the National Weather Service. They are very much using La Nina, as the background state of the flow of the atmosphere through this winter. We need to be discussing other things like the North Atlantic Oscillation or the polar vortex and how it might possibly disrupt this forecast that they provided. So again, Thursday, we're going to dig into all of this and give you that long-range outlook. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, when we think about the way that this season's progressed so far this fall, I want to show you a map that shows the extent of temperatures below freezing that we've had so far through this past weekend. And we can see that throughout much of the Carolinas, we've avoided this so far. So no early frosts. We did have a couple of times where in the Appalachian Mountains, our temperatures got down there around that freezing mark at high elevation. But I just want to point out to most of the corn and soybean farmers that when you get into the primary corn and soybean belt, much of it has already experienced a frost. But thankfully, the crop was mostly finished by the time the temperatures cold enough to get down below freezing got to that area. So if we look at a map that shows from the October 1st through October 19th, what the average temperature ranks are by climate district, we can see how warm things have been across the western part of the United States where the large ridge is sat. Across the Carolinas, we would call this a cooler start to the month of October, but it's not as though we haven't had a few days where the temperatures really climb back up. And I'm going to talk to you about that temperature pattern coming up here in just a few moments. But first, this is the way the weather has really behaved deep in the atmosphere where the jet stream is. We've seen strong winds here at the jet stream level coming into the Gulf of Alaska, running over this large ridge over the west coast. And those winds have kind of dived down like this. But instead of continuing to push all the way to the east coast, at times they've been wrapped around the trough that's been between the Great Lakes and the Hudson Bay. And this is part of the reason why any system, for example, like Hurricane Delta that came into Louisiana, didn't go through the lower Mississippi River Valley up into the Midwest and instead got pulled in this direction. It was all that upper level flow that made that possible, including that big ridge that's just off the image here that's been sitting over the North Atlantic. So you can see what those winds have done. And as the winds have kind of come racing and diving into the midsection of the country, the fact that we've allowed them to rebound pulling into the northeast has really spared us from long duration cold air. But I'll tell you what this pattern has done. It's produced a big spot in the middle part of the country of upper level convergence in the jet stream. It's been very, very dry there. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. It's also been dry west where the ridge has just gone to the north of California. So on Saturday, let me show you the consequences of this pattern. We had high pressure sitting here over like the Appalachian Mountains, and overall it was a beautiful day on Saturday across North Carolina with calmer winds. But look at where those winds were strong this past weekend, right here in the midsection of the country. And that's right where I live, and I'd like to show you a few things that we've seen here lately. This is a picture taken by my friend Chad Colby, who was up flying around getting some pictures here of the Midwest, and what he saw was several of these large burn scars across our fields that have been harvested here. This has been due primarily to the extremely dry and windy conditions, and sometimes it's because of equipment fires like you see here. This is another picture taken here in central Illinois just recently of a combine for harvesting wheat and soybeans here, caught on fire. Also out west, you probably heard in the news a lot about the Cameron Peak fire. Well, this is a video taken by the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and what you've got here is the large smoke plume that spread through Colorado into Kansas, even over to Missouri from this particular fire. Well, here's the reason why. October 1st through the 19th, take a look at these precipitation ranks by climate district. Parts of the Southwest getting into the Four Corners states, and then from Texas to Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, even parts of Iowa, we are experiencing an extremely dry fall. What's kept much of North Carolina over on the near normal to wetter than normal side of things is the fact that we keep spreading moisture from the south and west of us into our area, including the precipitation we saw from Hurricane Hurricane Delta, and also from before that with a Beta coming through. Remember that? That seems like so long ago. But again, this is just showing you where things currently sit right now through the 19th of October. Another way to look at it here is looking at precipitation over the last couple of weeks. And it's important to point out that as you get over here toward the northeastern coastal area of North Carolina, there is a pocket in there that's been drier. But the rainfall that went over the weekend right in through here did soak points just to the west of there. And overall, we are seeing a wet start to the month of October here for most of the Carolinas. Some dry patches there in South Carolina. Looking over this past weekend, you can see where that low pushed the moisture right in through this area before spreading it toward Maine. And so there's a narrow corridor right in through here that we did get some heavier precipitation for higher pressure moved in for the remainder of the weekend. Now, from there, I'd like to talk to you about the winds, and we're going to play this out here just through the next week. What we're going to see here throughout much of this week is relatively calm conditions over the Carolinas, while the midsection of the United States, as you can see here, is going to go back over to a very, very windy pattern. Our wind concerns are primarily from tropical systems that thankfully are going to be staying pretty far away from the Carolinas as we press forward in this forecast. So let's get right to it. Over the next week, so this goes out to next Sunday night, this is the total accumulated precipitation map from the European model. And generally, if you look across the state of North Carolina, we see our precipitation amounts are relatively light, with much of the state receiving less than a half an inch. And I'll show you the timing on that in just a few moments. But just to show you the difference between our models, this is the broad scale view from the European. Here's the same view from the GFS. The GFS is actually much drier across the state of North Carolina. As you can see there, only bringing in some coastal showers here throughout the beginning of this week. Again, European here, and the GFS is there. Now I want to take you back to the European. I want to talk about this feature right here, because what could be bringing in kind of a nose of wetter conditions out of the Gulf of Mexico is this tropical system that's trying to develop right now in the Caribbean. So we better get in and talk about what's going on in the tropics. Now, interestingly enough, the latest model runs from the European model, which are in the background, have kind of dropped this particular feature off in terms of letting it develop into a tropical cycle. In other words, a low pressure center. The National Hurricane Center has given it a 20% chance of developing, with a 90% chance of this system right here becoming either tropical storm or Hurricane Epsilon. Now, thankfully, the steering currents out here in the open Atlantic are going to keep this away from the Carolina coast. But I want to come back to what's going on right now in the Caribbean, because some of that moisture could get pulled up in toward Florida, eventually through parts of Georgia into South Carolina, North Carolina, likely staying west. But I want to keep a close eye on that as we move forward. Now, one of the reasons why this is happening is because after spending 45 days right here in phase 4, the MJO has finally jumped out into phase 5 and will be curling around through phases 6 and 7. Now, what does all that mean? That means that right here where I'm drawing this black line, over parts of the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and South America, we're going to be having much better upper level support for the development of tropical systems. You can see it in map form right here. You see these cooler colors? That just says that the upper levels of the atmosphere have kind of had the lid removed off of the developing tropical systems. And so we're just going to watch it carefully to see if anything does emerge here out of the Caribbean that could possibly spread rainfall across parts of the Carolinas. And just remember, as we go into October and into November, we still need to keep an eye out on this part of the Atlantic for potential tropical development, and the same thing for the Gulf of Mexico. This hurricane season still has 45 more days on it, so please don't forget that as we move forward. Now, right now we're dealing with a front, and thankfully the way that this front is progressing through parts of the Ohio River Valley, it's not going to be getting here over toward the Carolinas. What we're seeing, though, is that over the next few days, there's a chance for some coastal showers and possibly a thunderstorm. But other than that, that's all we're going to be talking about at the beginning of this week. I'll at least try to show it to you here by running this high-resolution NAM model. High pressure is really going to protect much of North Carolina, but you watch right in through here as I play this forward. You can see some scattered showers trying to move their way in just off the Atlantic, but it's really going to be confined early this week to right here along the coast. And that's all that we're really talking about. So what's the big player moving forward? It's right there, that deep trough tucked in the midsection of the country. But the question is it ever going to elongate, stretch out, come over to the East Coast? Let's play this forward to see what we're expecting here. So starting now and pausing it right here by middle of the week, we see that throughout much of this week, we are going to be under the influence of this broader upper level ridge that you see here, while what could be epsilon, possibly even a post-tropical or extratropical system, stays way out here into the open ocean. So as I go through Tuesday into Wednesday, and now Thursday and even Friday, we just continue to see the ridging here, keeping all the cold air, the deep trough, the unsettled weather way back here in the northern plains. So other than maybe seeing some morning fog, possibly some dense morning fog, we're going to have a relatively nice week overall with temperatures really rebounding late in the day. So when does this all change? Well, I've now got you out to Saturday. Into Sunday. It may be that time period that you see there's just a weak reflection of a trough here that the European model wanted to bring in some of that moisture, but it's going to be this weekend and past that we have our best chance at seeing some scattered showers and maybe some storms from that. But as I take you all the way out to early next week, this trough is still way back far to our west. And at that point, it's really not cutting through. So if I just show you the European model's forecast through Friday night, it's just going to be the scattered chance of storms riding through here that we really have to be on the lookout for. And you can see the amounts are extremely light. So when is our next chance at rainfall going to be here? Well, look, see the high pressure cell sitting in place early this morning? Let's watch this again. That's what keeps much of our chances of rainfall away through midweek. All we're watching early this week is the chance for some coastal showers and storms. Now, as I play this forward, I'm all the way out to now Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon and evening. Again, same story here. We're going from there into Thursday morning, afternoon and evening. Just, again, that easterly flow maybe bringing some scattered showers and storms to the coast. But that's all. High pressure tends to dominate. This is Friday afternoon and evening. Now getting into the weekend. This is Saturday morning, afternoon and evening. And it may be at that point that one of these big storm systems that's coming through bringing snow to the northern plains and heavy rain to where I live, that we might start to see our chances for precipitation increase. It's when that tropical moisture gets pulled in here and is run along that frontal boundary that by Saturday night, getting into Sunday morning, afternoon and evening, our chances of precipitation increase. So basically, by the time I'm talking to you next week, we'll know what that precipitation was able to do. Now from there, what we're going to be watching at this point is what's going to happen in the center part of the United States. But overall, when you look out over the next 10 days or so, we just have coastal showers this week and then a chance over the weekend for some increased rainfall. So I just got to show you this because I want you to know what's going on. The northern plains of the United States just through the next week is looking for some big time snow. See if they're from Montana all the way through the Dakotas and Minnesota. So just in case you'd like to escape and go skiing, just head on up here because winter is on in full force in that region. Now, by the time I get out to next weekend, we see the trough beginning to start to sweep through. And that's, again, why we see better upper level support in that region starting this upcoming weekend going into next week. But notice that the models are keeping the heaviest rainfall when compared to normal really toward the eastern Corn Belt into the northeast, and not really advertising much above average precipitation as we stretch this all the way out into the second day of November right now with our week 2 forecast. So again, I'm not seeing major precipitation anomalies moving forward through our next 15 days. From there, what about the pattern as we look out into the longer term with respect to temperatures? Well, we do know that the GFS wants to sweep this trough through relatively quickly, while the European leaves it kind of hanging back a little bit. But what does that mean for temperatures, all right? So this is now Monday's high temperatures compared to normal. Very normal day for us here across North Carolina. Temperatures in the low to mid 70s. As we play this forward, getting in from Monday into Tuesday, once again, our temperatures are trying to rebound here under that higher pressure. A lot of mid 70s. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, same thing, but look at the broad scale warmth building behind this. But I'm sure your eye is drawn to the cold colors I've got up here. And as we go from Thursday into Friday, then into Saturday, and then on to Sunday, that's when we might possibly start to bring in some cooler weather. So we have a warm week that's ahead of us here. When does the cooler weather get here? Well, it won't necessarily be in the 6 to 10 day time period. Notice that both the GFS and the European keep us on the warmer side of things into the 6 to 10 day. But with that trough, as I showed you a few moments ago, finally moving east, it may be once we end November and begin end October and begin November, that we start to sweep through some cooler weather into this area. So we'll be on the lookout for that, but that's still 11 to 15 days away from us. Okay, longer term, as we look out into that week of November 2nd through November the 9th, you can now see the temperatures, the warmth spreading here, and the cooler weather tucked away in there. But notice as we go out beyond that, the 9th through the 16th, much of our global model output from the GFS, from the European, wants to actually just bring in a bit more broad-scale warmth across the United States. Now, these models have had a systematic week 4 warm bias. In other words, they've been too warm in the week 4, but we'll keep a closer eye out on it. Over there on the left, those are your precipitation forecasts. And what I just want to point out is that no model right now is picking up on any sort of extreme in terms of precipitation. So we're just going to watch it week by week, but I just want you to know the longer range models aren't really seeing anything that's of alarm. Now, again, on Thursday at our webinar, we're going to go into the deep details here of the long range forecast for the rest of fall and winter. But this at least gets us through mid-November. From there, I want to talk to you about South America. It has been extremely dry. Over the last 45 days, this map shows precipitation anomalies, and this has been one of the driest starts to the growing season we've had here in over a decade. Now, why has it been so dry? Well, normally, over here on the left, we would start to see stronger advection or movement of moisture coming off of the Atlantic, cranking on the Brazilian monsoon, which generally spins kind of in that direction. Well, that's what we saw compared to normal. Look over here at how things have behaved so far this year. While we had some decent flow here, it's been very weak throughout much of rest of Brazil. So the monsoon's been delayed in coming on. And we do have this to share with you, though. Despite the very late planting of soybeans, we do expect that over the next week, heavy rain to move through here. And in that corridor, there's 1 to 2 inches of total rainfall expected. Then getting into week 2, we expect that to continue to stay wet. And therefore, what has been a very dry start to the growing season is going to get wet in a hurry. The bad news is for Brazilians is this is going to continue to delay the planting of soybeans, because even though they need the moisture to get started, too much rainfall is going to basically prevent them from getting field work done quickly. So they've gone from one extreme to the other as the monsoonal rains start to come in. Now, I told you on Thursday we're going to be talking about long-range forecasting. And one of the things that I've been analyzing is the behavior of this La Nina. And I've pulled out some analog years, and this is going to be important for our upcoming fall forecast and winter forecast for North Carolina as well. But let me show you what I got in South America. You see, the years that I find to be the closest analog to this one are listed down here. And during those same years, it was very dry in September and October in the same place it is this year. So it seems to be a good analog. And take a look at this. What happened in the following December through February? It was dry in this part of Brazil, wet right in through here, but dry in Argentina. Now take a look at this. This is the long-range forecast for this upcoming December, January, and February for Brazil. Dry in Argentina, wet in between. See, the analogs are matching the long-range forecast well. So for soybeans, for the safrinha corn and cotton, this is a critical thing to be watching. I'll provide you all the details again in that webinar on Thursday and again next week. Thanks for your attention. Look forward to talking to you then. Thank you.